So we're going to discuss subtraction of whole numbers. What are whole numbers? The set of numbers starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Now, if you have 8 minus 5 is 3, we say that the difference of 8 and 5 is 3, right? So when I say difference of 8 and 5, I take 8 first and subtract 5 from it. So it's 8 minus 5. Now what if I said difference of 5 and 8? It is subtraction, but 5 comes first and then you subtract 8 from it. The number is 3, but the sign is negative because 8 is greater than 5. So remember the language. So if I say difference of 4 and 7, the word difference suggests subtraction, but you take 4 first because you said that first, minus 7. 4 minus 7 is negative 3. That's called the difference. So you need to understand the term difference and how to use it in a sentence. And then, of course, if you subtract 5 from 8, which means 8 minus 5, then 8 is called the minuend and 5 is called the subtrahend. Now, 8 minus 5 is equal to 3. And how do you check if that is correct? Add 3 to 5. And then you get 8, which is the number that you started with. 15 minus 3 is 12. How do you check if the answer is correct? Take 12, add 3 to it, and you have to get a 15 if your answer is correct. 3 minus 0 is 3. Basically, you're subtracting nothing from 3 and you get a 3. Why? Because 3 when added to 0 is equal to 3. 5 minus 3 we know is 2. How do we check our answer? 3 added to 3 added to 2 is equal to 5. Now 4 minus 1 is 5. I'm sorry, it's not a 5, it is, erase this. 4 minus 1 is a 3, we're not adding here, we're subtracting. 4 minus 1 is 3, and why is that? Because 3 plus 1, so you're going back, adding the 1, and you get a 4, which is the number that you started with. So 4 minus 1 equals 3, because 1 added to 3 is equal to 4. Now let's subtract 5 minus 2. Let's do it the traditional way. Line up the place values. 5 minus 2 is 3. 4 minus 3 is 1. 3 minus 1 is 2. And it's 213. So 3 is in the hundreds place, so it's a 300. 4 is in the tens place, so it's a 40. 5 is in the ones place, so it's a 5. 1 in the next number is in the hundreds place, so it's a 100. 3 is in the tens place, so it's a 30. 2 is in the ones place, so it's a 2. Now we're going to subtract 5, and then you're subtracting a 2. Remember, this is subtraction. Let's just make sure we're subtracting. 5 minus 2 is equal to 3. 40 minus 30 equals 10. 300 minus 100 equals 200. So 2 in the hundredths place, 1 in the tens place, 3 in the ones place is 213. Now we have 1501. So we have a 1000 plus 500, 0 in the tens place, and 1 in the ones place. 875. There's no thousands place. It is 8 in the hundreds place, so it's an 800. 7 in the tens place, so it is a 70, plus 5 in the ones place. So how do we subtract? We go 1, always start with the 1 number on the top, subtract 5 from it. Now that's not possible. So we have to borrow 1 from the previous place value. Now that's a 0. So now 0 has to borrow a 1 from here, a 100 from here. So this becomes a 400. And when you borrow the 100, let me change the color here. This becomes a 100 now. Now remember, the 100 has to give a 10 to the ones place. Remember, that's why we started this process. So that becomes a 90. And when you give a 10, 10 plus 1 becomes 11. So 11 minus 5 is equal to 6, because 6 plus 5 equals 11. Now this 90, we're going to subtract 70 from it, and it becomes a 20. Now we have to subtract an 800 from 400. Now 800 is too large for 400 to be completed. So what do? We borrow a 1, which is really 1000, from this place. So this becomes a 0, and this 1000 gets added on to 400, and it becomes a 1400, 1400. Now we can subtract 800 from 1400, and that becomes a 600. And that's of course a 0. So 6 in the hundreds place, 2 in the tens place, 6 in the ones place. So the answer is 626. So let's do it the usual way, where we are not thinking about the expanded form. 5 is too large to be subtracted from 1, so we borrow a 1. But where does the 1 come from? The 0 doesn't have a 1 to give. So it borrows a 1 from here, becomes a 10, and then the 10 becomes a 9, and that's how you get a 1 here. 11 minus 5 is equal to 6. 9 minus 7 is equal to a 2. This, remember, is a 4. And when you subtract, how do you subtract an 8 from 4? You need to borrow a 1. So that becomes a 0, and this becomes a 14. 14 minus 8 is 6, and your answer is 626. So it's a good idea to understand why this process works. But when you do subtractions, you do it the usual way. But remember that this is what is happening in the background. Now let's do one more subtraction problem. The zeros are always confusing, so let's do this one problem. So we're doing subtraction, remember. 2 minus 4. That is not possible because 4 is larger than 2. So we need to go to the left, one place value to the left to borrow, but the tens place has nothing to give. The tens has to borrow from the hundreds. The hundreds place has nothing to give. So the hundreds place has to borrow from the thousands place. And finally, 5 can give a 1. It becomes a 4, and this becomes a 10. But now the 10 has to give a 1 to make this a 10, but that becomes a 9 because it gave a 1 to the tens place. Now the tens place has to give a 1 to the ones place, so this becomes a 9, and that's a 12. 12 minus 4 is equal to 8. Now 9 minus 3 equals 6. 9 minus 0 equals 9. 4 minus 6 is not possible, so we have to borrow a 1. Now 8 gives a 1 and becomes a 7, and that's a 14. 14 minus 6 is 8. 7 minus 5 is 2. So our answer is 28968. So let's put our commas, count in threes starting from the right. It's 28,968.